It's a Wikihow.
Can't remember what the noise was. Is it like a ding ding? What was it? That was like a very high pitched.
You say woo at poetry time with Cam.
Oh, woo. Okay.
It's okay. No, one of these days we're going to get this.
We're going to get it.
Today, I have a Wikihow that I think is really actually fitting for our guests today.
I did come up with it. I did a high-pitched, like, Law and Order bum bum. I think that's going to be, every time you say Wikihow, it's going to be bum bum.
Love it.
Is that trademarked? I hope not. Anyway.
Yeah. So the Wikihow I have for you today is how to come out to your parents.
Oh. Via text.
There's actually a whole nother Wikihow about writing a letter, but then they add the texting piece in there.
But how to write a letter to your parents about coming out. Dear mother and father.
So, yes, I've been at war for 3 years now. I miss you dearly.
I found something about myself.
Also,
Charles.
I'm very gay. Coming out to your parents can seem intimidating or daunting for many LGBTQ individuals. I'd say almost all of them. I don't know anybody who did not feel intimidated by that.
Yeah, hold on. I want to ask you this because I actually don't know the answer. Were you uncomfortable or scared or anything about coming out to Plate, your dad, about being, pan?
I was thinking about this. I still haven't. I also am not.
To the show, right?
Yeah, sometimes. I also not even remotely. He's been very supportive. He has grown as a human being in really outstanding ways, but I think would have always have been. All my friends were gay. He figured I was too.
He also was very supportive of my transition, which I think is always like a good kind of stepping stone.
He was far more supportive of you in your transition than he was when he found out that your mom was pregnant with you. So
that is fair. That is very fair.
But that's also grandparenthood anyway, I digress.
Sorry, listeners, as we talk about our family dynamics.
That's the show. Consider how receptive you think your parents will be with the news. If you think that your parents might already suspect your sexual orientation and they will likely be supportive, then move forward with making a plan. If you think this will completely shock your parents, then consider how they might react. That was the worst framed paragraph, as usual.
If you think that they'll have a reaction... Yeah, I was going to be like, if you think that they'll have a reaction, don't have a plan.
Be sure to improvise if you think they're going to react negatively.
Okay, hold on.
This.
I just need to come out real quick.
Please.
Anybody who's coming out to their parents and they feel unsafe or like they won't go, please have a safety plan in place.
Truly.
For something.
Have it no matter what. Unless you're really assured. Anna did with me. She'll mention that in the episode that we've already recorded, but we're about to play for you. But... it's true. You really never know how somebody's going to react or where their biases lie, and do be very careful with that.
Yes. It's very important that, joking aside, I know that we're probably going to have a lot of young listeners on this episode. You never know how anyone is going to react, and it's really important that you make sure that you are safe.
Truly.
Back to the funny.
So, drop hints if you want to get a better sense of how they might respond. If coming out could put you in danger, it might not be the right time. Yeah. I
actually agree with this in a lot of ways. I did this with you. I did this with Tara. I did this with a lot of people, asking them, hey, so like I had this friend who came out as gay. What are your thoughts on that? Or like even more subtle of, hey, I think I like watermelon or something like that. Just something to try and test the waters about maybe I'm fruity, maybe not. I don't know.
The watermelon thing flew over my head here, but yeah, if that's a subtle hint that you're gay or trans, I think start where you feel most comfortable. Also, this says
I don't drink enough water. That wasn't me coming out as a trans femme, but
I sit weirdly in chairs.
I make fruitcakes a lot.
Right. So then it says, stick to your decision once you make it. This will prevent you from delaying telling them or being disorganized when you do. So I thought that was an interesting one because I also am like, don't ever feel any pressure to come out to somebody until you are fully ready. Don't pressure yourself into sticking to your decision. If you are getting any sense that you're in danger or it's not going to go well or you're just not in the right mental space, retreat. Go back to the drawing board and try again another day.
I can't tell you how many times I had to redo my whole thing every time. Like, it was like probably 100 times before I actually sent the text to Cam. And that was with my friends being like, hey, you really should do this. You are miserable.
So this is like 50-50 on good advice, because the actually next item is gather the support you need to go through with telling them. And we talk about this all the time. Surround yourself with a support system of people that can be part of your plan, just in case things go bad, but also just for people to say you're not crazy. This is important. We support you.
Yeah, it's very much important to have a support system. That is a major part of safety planning, is making sure that you have supports with you. It's no fun to not have people who are supporting you and having your back and are going to be there by your side no matter what. It's really important.
Research questions you anticipate that they might ask. Being well-informed while having this conversation will further assure them that you're serious.
We've had this discussion before with Rebecca. I'm going to tell you
some of the questions, though, that Wikihow has decided to throw out there, which are legitimate questions that especially a transphobic parent might ask, but I find them absolutely ridiculous. One is, why are you gay? I thought you'd like that. There's a YouTube video. Anyway.
Why are you gay? Who says I am gay?
I heard that all gay people have HIV and AIDS.
Oh, God, that one is... This could be used for a lot of different, coming outs. I heard that people with DID are violent.
Oh, God, yeah.
Calling out some people in my life. Just, it's a thing. It's a thing that people are going to assume the worst about your identity that you're coming out with.
Will you be able to get a job?
Legally,
it's
yes.
a legit question. It's just a very weird thing for somebody to ask.
Thank you so much for telling me that you're gay. I'm really concerned, though, about your future financial status. Are you going to be able to get a job? I know that you're fruity, but can you get a job?
Will you be able to get a job? The answer is no.
Okay, hold on. That does sound like a parent, like a concerned parent being like, oh my God, you're gay? I heard about Steve. Steve lost his job because he was gay. Are you going to be able to work? It does come from a very I care about you kind of place.
Truly.
I think.
It can only be funny because the ridiculousness of the fact that these are actual concerns that we do have in the LGBTQ community, and also it's so strange that we have to ask these things. That might be an automatic place that your parents will go to. Choose an appropriate time and place to come out. There is often never a right time to do things like this, but you need to put thought into when you're going to tell them. Now, Anna's talked a lot about sending a text. Yeah. Did you think about the timing of that text?
A lot, actually, yeah. I had to be in a good spot mentally. I had to be in a safe spot physically. As we've talked a bit about on this show, physical abuse and violence is something that I've had in my past. I also was not certain on how either of you would take it, either of my parents. I had a feeling that you would probably take it well, and I think that came from you have always been fairly supportive of me in your own interesting way.
That's such a good way to put it, and I stand for it. Yes. The best way I knew how.
But yeah, no, I thought a lot about the location of where I would send that text, what time it was. It was early in the day. I didn't want to send it towards the end of the day when I might be seeing you soon. I wanted to make sure that you had time to process it. I wanted to make sure that I had time to process it, that everything was going to be good. Yeah, no, it may be surprising how much thought went into it.
I believe it. The hilarious part is we've never talked about this, and this is probably meat for a whole nother episode, but I was in the middle of my work day when I got that text. And I immediately had to go to my very close colleague at the time and say, I don't know what to do about this. I am freaking out right now. I don't know what to do. Please just talk me down here and help me, because I knew I was going to get it wrong. From that moment, I was like, I have no tools to prepare myself for the conversation we inevitably are going to have soon about this.
Listeners, if there was a big chunk missing, it's because we were figuring some stuff out and had to take a second. Our apologies. Welcome back. Wow. This Wikihow has really been enlightening, to be honest with you.
That's a good one. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because we've belabored this one a lot and gotten some good insights. I think this may actually go and actually have some good factual piece, which is learn to accept how far your parents go on the path to true acceptance. And every parent is going to reach a different point on the continuum of acceptance. And we know, having talked to our trans friends and colleagues, that sometimes you have to be accepting of where your parents are at to a degree just for your own mental health. Or you just say, you know what, I don't have a supportive parent and they don't need to be a part of my life, and that's okay. But I appreciate that Anna regularly says, hey, thanks for being supportive of me and doing these things together. That is super, super meaningful for me. And it's also a path that I'm continuing to go down and continuing to learn and grow in.
It's important as trans folks to recognize that people who don't live this every single day, who aren't experiencing this every single day, don't always know what to say and don't always have the tools to be accepting 24 hours a day. Hi, I'm Anna, a transgender person.
And I'm Cam, your dad.
And this is The Transgender, a podcast chronicling my transition.
And a cisgender man learning how to support it. We are so thrilled today to have two special guests on the show. We have Hannah from Transforming Families, and we have Hildie, who is an amazing young person who is repping the trans kids community. Welcome to both of you. We're so glad to have you here.
Welcome. It's so awesome to have you both.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Awesome. We always like to start off our show with the same question for all of our guests, which is, tell us everything about yourself. Or I guess selves in this case.
Hildie.
Okay, so I use she, her pronouns. My name is Hildie. I'm an activist, actress, and all-around performer. I sing, I dance, I act. I do everything. I've been in musicals, I've been in plays. I've done a lot of advocacy work recently. I've spoken at the Capitol multiple times this year.
And Hildie, how old are you, just for reference here?
I'm 13. Just turned 13 July 2nd. Yeah.
And which capital were you speaking at? Were you speaking at Washington, D.C., Minneapolis?
Both?
Both? Awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You can tell about what you did.
Yeah, I just spoke in front of the Department of Education.
Whoa.
That's a big deal. Holy cow.
Yeah.
And tell us a little more about that. So what I got to see a recording of your speech for the Minnesota legislature, 4 minutes of absolutely moving testimony about our trans refuge bill. What were you doing at the nation's capital? I'm not familiar with that one.
So basically it worked like a panel. They asked me questions about supporting trans kids in schools, how my school experience was, school stuff, so they can do better.
I hope that you're still in school. You're 13.
It's dropped out.
No.
You've already found your calling. It's great.
It's advocacy work.
Oh, wait,
Trust me, it's a great calling.
Hannah, earmuffs. Hildie, do whatever you need to do.
Listen. I dropped out of college when I was like 19. Schooling isn't everything.
It is going back, though.
I am going back, though. That is true. Hannah, what about you? What is your background? How did you get to be here? Everything like that.
Yeah, so I'm Hannah Edwards, and yes, indeed, I am Hildie's mom. I get asked more often. That's how I'm recognized, is as Hildie's parent. So I use she, her pronouns, and I am also the director of Transforming Families, which is pretty amazing. We found Transforming Families when Hildie was about 5, right before her transition, and they've just been a great support for us. It's a peer-led support group for trans and non-binary youth and their caregivers and parents. And so we meet, and there's 4 meetings a month in person in the Twin Cities metro area and 1 online. The parents meet together, and then the teens and tweens go off and have their own meeting with a paid adult trans facilitator. And then our littles go off and have a play-based group. That's what I'm doing right now. I also work part of my time as the training coordinator for Outfront Minnesota. And Outfront is the state's largest 2S LGBTQIA plus advocacy organization. And so I get to go around to corporations leading professional development for people about how to include and be in allyship with the 2S LGBTQIA plus folks in their organization and community. So that's pretty awesome.
As someone who just joined the work in a paid capacity for my first time, having started Gender Justice, is this the work you were doing prior to Hildie's transition and that? Or did you come to the work because it was a good support for your kiddo?
Yeah, so I like to say that I'm an accidental advocate, right?
Same.
I was an art teacher for 13 years prior to this. I know you're doing the math because you're looking at me and you're like, she's so young, 13 years of work.
You started when you were 13, just like Hildie.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. We just like to be super young when we start our jobs. No, so I was an art teacher mostly taught K-5 visual arts, so I saw everybody in the building. And so I would say that like equity and diversity and inclusion was always a priority of mine. I'm a bi person. And so that's also, the queer community has also always been a point for me that has been a passion point. But I found myself being pulled more and more as the mother of Hildie and as our family's story went public to do the work that I'm doing with Outfront right now, which is that training. I would go to different parts of the district and lead conversations or professional development for teachers. And so it just felt like a natural fit. Outfront is also Transforming Families' fiscal sponsor. And so it's a pretty unique position where I get to go and do 75% of my job is for Outfront. And then 25% is Director of Transforming Families. And we'll just see how that shifts and moves as Transforming Families grows. But I don't think you could have told me 10 years ago that this would be my full-time job. So
yeah.
That's interesting.
I would just love that so much. And I have to say, just on behalf of Anna and I'm jealous that Transforming Families exists and we didn't get to take part in that during our early years of this transition. It's so cool that exists and really a special thing for trans parents and kids.
Yeah,
I will also say it's very interesting and amazing how we have two trans advocate children here with their parents. Like, that is the story that we hear all the time on our podcast is thank you for having a supportive parent with you, all these things. And so I think it's really important that we also recognize that two parents are here for their trans children, sharing their story and continuing to do this work. As you said, accidental allies, which I love.
Sorry.
Or accidental advocates. Sorry, accidental advocates, not accidental allies.
Yeah. That's right.
All the above.
Yeah.
You can ask the next question. I'll ask.
No, I was going to send it to you since I've been talking a lot.
Okay. We want to hear from Hildie about her transition, how she knew she was trans, and what makes her feel euphoric in her gender identity. This is worded weirdly, but that is how we had it written out. So Hildie, please talk to us about your transition.
Okay, so before I transitioned, I guess I always had the feeling like I wasn't like the other like cisgender het boys. I loved dresses. I used to tie a blanket around my head for like long hair. I would play with like dolls, typical feminine attributes. I always knew like deep down inside, I was like, I want to be like my dolls. I want to be hyper feminine. I want to be like really girly. And then it got to the point where like I started like being a bit more like gender nonconforming, which I always was. I was very not in the binary for a long time. But to the point where I finally got to kindergarten, right? After lots of intense preschools, I feel like. And then kindergarten hit, and that's a whole nother story. It's not good. People were like bullying to the point where I don't know, it was bad. It was really bad. I don't know. I had like pink shoes and a like typically not boyish backpack. And even that was just like I got bullied for it.
Can we describe the backpack? Because it was actually rather adorable.
Yeah.
Was it inside?
Yeah.
Was it inside? It was Inside Out, the Pixar movie. It makes me cry.
And it was sparkly. It was very sparkly and beautiful.
That movie still makes me cry to this day, though. I cry so hard.
How did Disney become such a great mental health and LGBTQ support system? I never would have guessed in a million years.
I will say they show that. I don't think that they really are that. I don't want to put any benefit to massive corporations.
Sure,
correct.
But I'm not purposely trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But still good movies.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
You had the backpack and the pink shoes.
And even that, I would just get bullied for and verbally harassed for. As I got bullied, I like started to notice more that this could be an actual thing. So then I remember I was like in the car, we were driving, or was it you? I don't really even know at this point. It was one of them. And I think it was either like, I don't feel like I'm a boy anymore. I brought up like how I don't want to use the boys' bathroom. I think it was the bathroom. And then like it eventually led up to the point of being like, okay, I don't want to use the boys' bathroom because I am not a boy. And then it just got more like gradual, more like persistent, more I want to change my name. I want to change pronouns. I want to like socially transition. I want to grow my hair out. I want to get more girl clothes, etc., to the point where that kindergarten wasn't a safe space for me anymore. And then we had to file like a lawsuit too. And then, I don't know. Then I got paid a settlement, probably pay for my college one day, or at least help. So if you cross the trans kid, you're going to have to pay.
I love that. I love that so much. One of the things that I'm curious about because it's something that I've been asked a lot in my life, and I've never really had a good answer for it. And you were right around the age when I transitioned. In your own words, what would you say, when would you say you started your transition?
I think I transitioned around 5.
You're 5.5 when we made the social transition, but
yeah, always was the way it was in a way.
Yeah, at some point.
I think that's a fairly common thing.
Yeah, we just needed to listen. It was like we were telling Hildie, I would say to her, honey, boys can have long hair and dad has earrings, boys can have earrings. And finally she was like, Mom, I'm not a boy. And I was like, oh.
And Hildie, I'm really glad that you have very supportive parents and that you were able to transition so young and that you didn't have to go through the struggles of being older, going through puberty and having to experience that. When I came out to Cam starting out, I was about 12 or 13 and texted him from my school, had a whole safety plan in place, everything like that. And I'm really glad that you were able to transition so young and you don't have to experience that, hopefully, in your life. I really hope that won't be something that you ever have to experience. Moving on a little bit from that, what makes you feel euphoric in your gender identity? You've lived as a woman now for, 8 years or so?
Yeah.
What makes you feel good?
I don't know. I love my hair. My hair is a big part
Your
of how
hair is great.
Big,
it's so good.
Curly, blonde, everything. It's giving.
There's mine.
Oh, it's beautiful. I'm jealous of the length at this point. I'm trying to grow it out my hips.
I've had a lot more years to grow it out.
I love my hair. I love doing my makeup. That makes me feel so euphoric and womanly. I just started hormones not that long ago, so just noticing how puberty is shaping me as a person, and now it's I'm finally going through it. I'm finally becoming a teenager. I don't know. Yeah. That makes me feel such euphoria. I don't know. Funny story. I actually took double the dose that I was supposed to, on accident. I took 1 pill instead of half a pill. So I was so emotionally turbulent. It was bad.
It was only a few weeks, and then we realized what we were doing.
It was okay.
It happens. I still
totally
sometimes, I do an injection, and sometimes I still accidentally draw up a little bit more or less than I'm supposed to, and you can feel it, but
yeah,
it's just a part of doing hormones, and it's something that will get easier with time.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you are getting to experience this, though. It's going to be so good for you, I hope.
So, Hildie, can we talk about school a little bit? Because you mentioned this, and I think this is an important part of not just your story, but Minnesota's story about how to support trans kids. You were at some of the forefront of our movement in making this a safe state for kids to be in. And so safe schools for trans kids, still an issue in Minnesota, even though we're one of the better places in the world. What have you seen evolve since your case with St. Paul? And what do you think still needs to be done? And Hannah, please feel free to chime in because you're in the work so much here too.
Yeah.
I feel in kindergarten, that was the worst it could have gotten for me. It was bad, to the point where it was not safe anymore.
You had adults coming to the school to work against you too, right? Yeah. That's really upsetting.
That's horrible.
The Minnesota Family Council, there were some parents who were on the other side of us at one point, and I say the other side, there shouldn't be two sides, but you know who I'm talking about. I always like to tell people we weren't the first people to tell our story. It was actually a parent who opposed us, who went and described Hildie to one of the newspapers, and we had to have our lawyers send a cease and desist with that description because her hair doesn't look like everybody's hair. Anyway, that same group of family had the Minnesota Family Council come, and they rented out the gym at Nova Classical Academy and held a big talk about how to keep trans kids from having their rights at school, basically.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was really thankful. It was Transforming Families and Out Front and Gender Justice, who are lawyers, all kind of came to our aid. And we had a big message to the whole community and said, please show up for this talk, sit in the bleachers and wear purple. And when you look at pictures from that day, it's quite powerful because we outnumber by 2-3 times the number of people who came to listen to the talk.
So powerful. Yes.
That's really cool.
And then we did a silent protest at the end. This was a good 2-3 weeks before it came to a head, before we pulled Hildie from that school. But we did a silent protest afterwards where we all shuffled out of the talk about 10 minutes early and just stood on either side so that everybody exiting the talk had to walk through a wall of people holding signs that said, I love my trans kid and we support trans kids. So it turned that very tumultuous, hate-filled moment into something really beautiful. I feel like I went on a tangent there, but I feel like that's part of the story that doesn't always get told.
Yeah.
Our whole show is tangents.
I think they call me like circus animals once, right? They call me
The Minnesota Family Council.
They call me a circus animal. That's how bad they are. They have
Oh my God.
Called children
They're
animals.
Monsters.
They're nasty. They give me
That's so horrible. I am, Hildie, this is, as an adult, telling you you're valid and you're amazing, and it is so stupid that other adults put you through that when you were so young, and that adults are still putting you through all of the bad things that are happening. Sorry, we normally swear, and so I'm trying very hard to make sure that this is a family-friendly episode.
We want to share this broadly with families and kids, so we're toning down the swearing for this one.
The other thing I think, too, that's really important with Hildie is if you Google our family, you'll notice for a good long while it was just Dave and I really telling our story, our family story. And we tried to really keep Hildie out of some of it while she experienced it, and certainly went to therapy afterwards about what happened to her. We tried to keep her out of the spotlight for that very reason. She'd already gone through enough. And then just in the last couple of years, she's really started doing her own advocacy, both around what happened to her and then around trans youth in general. And I think for Dave, my husband Dave and I were both educators at that point. We thought, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen to another kid or another family ever again, really? And we were Gender Justice's first school case. And via us and via Transforming Families, we've recommended other clients, unfortunately, things that have happened to other families within Transforming Families, to Gender Justice. And every single time, Gender Justice wins, right? There hasn't been a case in Minnesota where people have sided with that wrong other side and taken away a trans kid's rights. So
I'll remind my colleagues how amazing they are at lawyering because, they win far more often than not.
Exactly. Gender justice for life.
I will also say to all of our listeners who are in communities that maybe don't have the resources that Minnesota does or are looking for a model to share, all of the organizations that all of us are working with communicate with each other. I work with Trans Northland. Trans Northland works very closely with Outfront Minnesota, Transforming Families, Gender Justice, and everybody works all together. So if you are at all looking for a model to try and build a trans community, look to the Minnesota nonprofit organizations that are all working together to create this network of safety for trans folks.
And I'll make an assumption for Transforming Families, but I can say this for the rest of those organizations. We're all willing to share. We can't be everything to everybody for the entire United States, but boy, can we tell you what has worked for our organizations in supporting trans youth in particular.
Yeah, I agree.
But then, after the whole big thing, I got to go to a really nice school that was, possibly, the most affirming school I have ever had the
a St. Paul public school.
Yeah, a St. Paul public school called St. Anthony Park. It was wonderful. Every single one of my teachers were so affirming and so amazing. And then I remember in third grade, first grade, I came out publicly in school for the first time. And the coolest thing was nobody cared. Nobody cared.
Isn't that the best? Yes.
It's always the parents that care. The kids will just roll with it. You're fine with anything. Especially before their wacko parents will just come into their brains and fill their brains with misinformation.
That's the perfect case of so my husband Dave owns a company called Gender Inclusive Schools, and he goes around the country training teachers about queer and trans kids and how to support them. And it's because we saw that difference, right? This school, Nova, what they did when you go look at our case was they created this unsafe environment. They refused to read books to the kids to contextualize queer identities, right? And then because of that, the kids were treating Hildie differently because their parents were up in arms. They were treating Hildie differently. And then the opposite happened at St. Paul Public Schools. She, at the end of first grade, after feeling safe for a year and a half, decided she wanted to come out. Dave and I took a big gulp because we were worried that the same thing might happen again. And it didn't. And really the difference was her first grade teacher and the principal were both there and they read I Am Jazz. And they said, this is what trans is. Does anybody have connections? And Hildie was like, I'm trans. And all the kids were like, cool, we just read about someone. And so the difference really is the education piece for kids and giving them that information and that vocabulary to understand the people who are in their classroom, their peers.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's something that we do a lot as well, but not for necessarily kids and youth. It's more for the adults. We really try and educate the adults in people's lives because honestly, the biggest place for hatred and misinformation is not the people who actively hold those beliefs. It's for the people who ignorantly hold those beliefs. Yes. So as we educate and as we teach both kids, youth, all of the age ranges, understanding and cooperation starts to build and create community.
Yeah, and I did that for the next years I had in St. Paul. I did that every year, and every year was the same, and it was always great. I even had one teacher from the last year before, my last year there, 3rd grade. My 2nd grade teacher was like, can I borrow the book? I want to read this to my classroom. And then I think it's just a yearly thing now. Yeah, but then I moved schools again. I went to Eakin, the suburbs, so that's fun. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's where my dad grew up, so we got that. But my 4th grade teacher was really nice. I didn't come out that year because it was my first year there. I was still feeling the waters. Then COVID hit. We don't talk about COVID. And then I came back to 5th grade in person, halfway through 5th grade. And then I came out, and it was, one of the best spaces. They had so many good questions that were not really gross and toxic. They were good questions. And then so many people came up to me and was like, I'm actually bi. I'm actually pan. And I'm like, oh, cool. Yay, queers,
We talk all the time about finding your community, and to find your community at your age, at not knowing if the community exists,
I think he was going to say at your age. Oh, there he goes.
Yeah, and then middle school.
Yeah, you're in middle school right now, aren't you?
No, not good.
Not good?
Not necessarily.
It never has been for anyone who ever went to middle school.
It's not not affirming. It's just they're not doing the best they can.
It's just middle school.
And with middle school, all the hard work, turbulence, I'm already on the tip of my iceberg here. And on top of that, I've had to report kids more times than I would have liked to this year. I have to report kids for slurs, dead naming, etc., 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 etc.
Want to get started with podcasting, but not sure how to get your content out there? All you need is a computer with a microphone, a quiet space to record, and Buzzsprout. We launched the Transgenda on Buzzsprout to easily distribute to every major podcast platform with just a few clicks. Plus, they provide a great-looking podcast website, audio players for other websites, detailed analytics, and more. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners. Join us and the 100,000 other podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Go to transgendapod.com/Buzzsprout or click on the affiliate link in the show notes to get started for free. Plus, you'll receive a $20 credit if you upgrade to any paid account, and you will also be supporting the Transgenda. That's transgendapod.com/Buzzsprout. Yeah.
And so I will say, I think we're seeing, because of what's happening across the country, this resurgence of some of these slurs and the idea that there is this debate, even in a safe place like Minnesota. And her school, while not perfect, has done the right thing in response each time.
That's good.
Looks like a not perfect world, but
I'm dealing with it. I'm holding on, making it through, barely.
I don't know about barely, but
Hey,
that's how we
cut
all
this out if you want, but middle school is going to make me lose my mind. It's going to be the end of me. These kids, old people, these teachers, it's like I'm going to lose my brain. They are not very, they are all...
You'll make it through.
You'll make
it through. I promise.
They do not
trust me.
Understand how to support ADHD too.
As a person who was trans and struggled a lot in middle school, you'll make it through. I know you will. You're very strong, and you are so great.
It does for everybody, but you totally will.
Yep.
You mentioned the resurgence, Hannah, and so I'm going to put this at you, but I want Hildie to give some insights here too, and that is, I know one thing I have heard, especially among the, what are we calling it now? X, the Twitter crowd, is how parents of trans kids have been transing their kids, which is the weirdest verb I've ever heard in my whole
That
life.
is the exact correct reaction, Hildie. Just laugh and laugh. That is the correct reaction.
Trans.
Yeah. So tell me more about that, Hildie. Like, you reacted in such a funny way. I feel the same way. I'm like, when I was told by Anna that she was trans, I was like, I have no idea what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go first, Hildie, because I have some thoughts on this too, but you go ahead.
Okay, first off, transing isn't even a word. Are y'all serious? I'm sorry. If you're gonna come at us, you can at least be grammatically correct. So maybe make up a real word next time. I don't know. But also, like, my parents had nothing to do with it. If anything, they barely had anything. It's not like they were like, ooh, we're gonna take you to the Pride Parade and turn you trans and gay. You know? You know? Like,
I like the vampire vibe you threw in there.
We're going to turn you gay.
No. But like, they had nothing to do with it. As kids, like, we know what we are and we know what we want. And I wanted to be a girl. So here I am now.
You are a girl. You always were.
And all you have to do is shut up and listen. My identity doesn't really have anything to do with you. And I don't think going on Twitter is ever going to change my identity. It's just gonna make me laugh because you're saying made up words.
This is, as a trans person who was on Twitter, don't ever go back on Twitter. It is a cesspool.
It's the worst,
I've
right?
been on Twitter before. I was gross.
Don't go on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. For me, Cam, I don't know how often it's happened to you, but just being in an advocacy work, we've gotten that claim made against us. We've been called groomers. We've been called child abusers or abusive parents. At first, it was like jarring and really hurtful. And then you build this thick skin and you're like, you just learn to ignore it. I will say there was one incident where it happened at my work as an art teacher. Like I said, I saw all 500 students. I wanted to build a safe environment for my kids that I would want my child to be having at her school. So I led an anti-bullying unit with the school counselor and then the other arts specialists. And we named bullying and we named different aspects of identity, which included LGBTQ identities with the whole school. And I got accused of pushing an agenda and all kinds of awful stuff, right? And I had these teachers who I had to then work with, really just leveling some nasty accusations at me that were just so wildly false.
Yeah.
That it was a little bit difficult, but thankfully my union and our gender inclusion policy kind of backed me up saying, no, this is actually really healthy and good for our students. And we're glad that Hannah knows how to talk about this. I don't know. It's interesting because I feel when you think about it, I cannot think of a way that I could have stopped Hildie from being herself. She would be miserable. She would still be a trans girl, even if I was trying to stop her from being herself. And so it's less about making your kid any certain way and more about celebrating and enjoying the person that they are. And for me now, because I've supported Hildie from such an early age, and not just me, my husband, our whole family has supported her from such an early age, we get to see this like powerful, outspoken, just like beautiful, amazing 13-year-old girl. And that's just who she is. And it's who she always was, but we didn't get in her way.
Yeah. And what's the opposite? I think we know it's resentful adults who are still trans at the end of the day, or do they survive? And those are the differences. And it's a sad reality that we need to prevent.
I think resentful adult is just my whole thing now.
I don't think you're resentful against me so much.
No, not against you. For a lot of things. Definitely not. Some things. But no, just kidding.
You can't raise kids without having some of those. It's okay.
No, but like, I just resentful adult. I love that. In that similar vein of thinking, these questions are directed towards Hildie. Hannah, you're welcome to answer them as well. Hildie, I've got two parts to this question. First is, what are your thoughts on being a youth advocate? You are a young person who's doing advocacy work that, I'll be honest, stresses me out, and I do it as a 21-year-old. And then two, what advice would you have for other trans kids? You're still growing up, living and learning. what would you say to people who are your peers, to people who might be younger to you, anything like that?
So first half, being an activist and an advocate as a 13-year-old trans girl, it's good. I feel like I'm really giving a voice for my community. And like most people, like they know trans adults, they don't know many trans youth, and they haven't heard their perspective. So I give a lot of perspective to my community, I feel like. And I don't know, sometimes it is really jarring though, because I know so many places I would not do the things I have been doing the past 2 years. I would not. And it's scary. It's really scary. Like, we're in a state of emergency right now. It's hard to think about. And I shouldn't have to grow up in a world like that. I'm only 13. I don't really need to be thinking of all this stuff.
To be honest, you shouldn't even need to be an advocate or an activist. Like, that should not be what you have to be doing.
You're sitting alone when suddenly a sultry voice starts whispering to you. It's my voice.
And mine.
No, shut up. Let me talk. This voice continues to tell you about a podcast that's been banned around the world for being too ridiculously sexy. I'm your host, Dana.
And I'm your host, Mayan.
And we'll take you on a journey of a lifetime.
Experience hilarious conversations about serious topics.
The coolest show no one's talking about.
Best worst case scenario podcast.
BWCS.
See you there.
Yeah, I do it because I feel the need, because I feel like I have to, because nobody else is. Because so many people are afraid, and nobody else is going to do it. Someone's got to do it. And I'll gladly do it, but it's hard sometimes, because it's like, at the end of the day, it's just, oh yeah, I did a good job today. I got the point across. I did good things. I've gotten good things done. But also the fact that I had to get those good things done, or else stuff that's happened in Minnesota would not be happening.
Yes.
Is like really hard to think about sometimes. And I don't know. At least I know more people now. So that's good. What do you mean?
Yeah.
I know I got so many good people that I know, like Representative Lee Finke. Representative Lee Finke, Andrea Jenkins, the governor, the lieutenant governor.
Oh, you're rolling in those.
Wow,
circles,
yeah.
Those are our heroes too. Lee is an amazing advocate and respects you a lot and tells your story a lot when it comes to the fact that the state needs to be more supportive of trans kids. So you have built a community of people that see you, which is really incredible, including Anna and I. That's why you're here, is because we believe your story needs to get told.
And I don't know. It's nice to know that so many adults care about me, honestly, because I know outside of Minnesota, like, most people probably would be like, oh, just another trans kid doing what they gotta do, whatever. Their parents transed them, etc., etc. Then we go on Twitter and type about them.
Now this is going to be a thing that she says.
Yeah.
A lot.
One thing I do want to say and backtrack on a little bit is there are people who are trying to advocate for you and for the youth. We may be targeted towards parents and towards cisgender folks or trans folks who are older and coming into their transition, but we really want to be helping the youth and advocating for the youth. I know that Lee Finke is a person who's advocating for the youth, and it may feel like you are the only person who's fighting this battle, but I can assure you that you are definitely not. You have so many people supporting you and so many people who are like up in the front lines fighting with you.
But there's no better voice than yours. You are the one who's experiencing this as a young person. So the best we can do is lift you up and thank you for sacrificing a part of your childhood to making this better for the next trans kids.
I want to be like a trans Greta Thunberg. Oh, yeah.
I think that's a great goal. I think you're almost there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
We just gotta get you up onto that national, like, higher stage.
Yeah, it's happening. So how about the second half of Anna's question? Because I'm curious. What advice do you have for other trans kids?
Don't let go of your identity. Honestly. Your identity is part of who you are. No matter How many people tell you that it's not right, or it's your parents' fault, or it's your community's fault, or it's the school's fault? It's nobody's fault. It's not even your fault. It's just who you are. It's not even a fault, honestly. And being connected to that makes me feel so good, so I can't imagine what it must feel for other people, too. But, I don't know. Try to thrive for me. Thriving is nice. Thriving is good. And, I don't know. Be who you are, because everyone else sucks. So,
just be yourself.
I think don't lose your identity is way more eloquent than I could have even come up with. So that is really impressive. Like,
really good.
You speak so well for a 13-year-old. Not to say anything against 13-year-olds, but you have definitely have had a lot of practice in this.
Yeah. You should see my middle school. It's way worse.
I was a middle schooler too.
Oh yeah, bro, don't lose your transness. That's what it's like.
Usually we ask the question, where can we find you? Hildie, I don't need you to reveal anything to our audience beyond just the fact that you exist, but where can we find Transforming Families if folks are interested in your services?
Yeah, so Transforming Families has a website, tffmn.org. We also have a Facebook, and we recently got an Instagram, Transforming Families MN. Watch for us on our public Facebook to be announcing things throughout the year. Right now, we've got a partnership with a distillery here in the Twin Cities called Earl Giles, which is exciting and amazing. Check out Earl Giles and have a house cup. We have something called the Day of the Transgender Child, which is actually coming up on September 23rd. I hope that we see the two of you there, anyone from all over Minnesota and beyond. But really, it's a day that started about 6 years ago as like our family, Transforming Families picnic. And it's grown from there, where we have guest speakers, and we really just make it a day about celebrating the joy of having trans children in our lives, celebrate those children and how amazing they are. There'll be drag story hour and like face painting and all kinds of amazingness. So watch for the announcements about that on our social media.
We're definitely going to try to make it down, because that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So exciting. The last piece of our show, and what we always like to make sure our guests can get a chance to answer, is we always like to end our show on a gender euphoria. Something that makes you feel great about yourself, great about your gender, anything like that. Hildie, can you bless us with a gender euphoria?
Hair.
Hair?
Back to that hair.
Hair, face hair, body hair, armpit hair, whatever hair you have, whatever makes you feel euphoric. Just hair.
Hair?
It can make an impact on you, can make an impact on other people. You can make a statement with it. Same with clothes. Same applies.
I love that. Hildie's gender euphoria is hair. Yep. That's how we're going to end the episode. I love it so much.
So good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah and Hildie.
Thank
you have
both
been
so much.
Among my favorite guests. You are amazing. And thank you for all your great work.
Thank you for having us.
Hildie, you're amazing. Keep up the good work. And I know that you will go so far in life. Hannah, thank you for supporting Hildie and what she's doing. And thanks for being an awesome advocate.
Aw.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. This has been great.
If you have questions about transitioning or supporting someone who is transitioning and you'd like us to talk about it on the show, please shoot an email to questions@transgenderpod.com, click the chat with us button on our website, or DM us on social media, not X.
Screw X.
Screw X. If you'd like to support the show, you can become a patron on our Patreon.
Woo! Shout out this week to Amy, who we saw out in the community. That was amazing. If you see us out in the community, come and say hi. It's really fun to meet you all. We love you, and it's really cool.
We love that. Also, in honor of reaching 100,000 listeners, woo! We're offering a new service. It's called Shoutouts. You can promote your work, say happy birthday to a friend, or whatever you'd like, and we'll read it on an upcoming episode. Visit transgenderpod.com to get yours today.
Restrictions apply. Be sure to check out our episode description for links to resources on today's topics, specifically links to Out from Minnesota, Transforming Families, and the NPR Changemakers article about Hildie.
Oh, an amazing guest. Thanks for listening. I've been Cam.
I've been Anna.
And this has been The Transgender.
Love you all, except the bigot.